Hi guys, welcome to our talk today. I'm sorry for the technical issues we had, but we'll be starting right now. I know that a lot of you here has come to see Henri Binsztok, but well, actually he couldn't come, so you'll have to tolerate me, Sergey Shpak, and Kentan Bourgerip during these 50 minutes. And during our talk, we'll try to present you how to actually add the end-to-end encryption into your proper application by using our solution DataPeps. You know, we really believe that adding end-to-end encryption into your solution, it's not the best, but it's the only way to protect your users' sensitive data. So just to get you on track, we'll talk about what exactly DataPeps is, what exactly the end-to-end encryption is, first of all. So as you can see here, we see a simple and an old love story between Alice and Bob. And Alice actually wants to express her affection towards Bob. And as you can see, Alice is quite shy. She's blushing, and she doesn't really want anyone yet to see her love messages that she sends to Bob. So what she does is she writes the message on her device. You can see the red message there. She then encrypts this message, and it becomes black. It becomes invisible to anyone except her and Bob. She passes this message to the cloud, to your application server, or to a public cloud, whatever you want. And after that, Bob receives this message, he decrypts it, and he reads it. The interesting thing here is that the encryption keys that were used for doing this process are always stored on Alice and Bob devices, and they never leave them. So no one can actually get access to their messages, to their information. What we'll be doing today, we'll be implementing a really simple application, a really simple note-keeping application that will be called Notes. And what the application will do is it will let the user log in, it will let the user create the notes, edit the notes, and probably share the notes with other users. And during the second part of talk, we'll actually add the end-to-end encryption to our application, and we'll see how to make things more secure and to make things better for your users. All right. So first of all, let's start with the tour around our front end, just to give you an idea of how we implemented the application, and to give you an idea of how, well, of the fact that the application that we have chosen is a simplistic one, and it's nothing to implement that. So basically here on this slide you can see the stack of technologies that we used. It's just a very common stack for the for front ending. We used the plain old JavaScript along with React and Redux, and just to style things up, we used also Bootstrap. So as you can see, all our application takes 1,200 lines of code, not more, not less, and a lot of this is boilerplate. So actually, if you'll get afterwards our application from our GitHub repo, you'll see that actually what you see is what you get. There's no magic hidden in it. To give you an idea of of the UI of our Notes application, I'll show you this screen. Here is the view of the new Notes creation. As you can see, the user can actually create the new node by providing a title and a content to the node, click and save it, and in the background you can actually see the nodes that have been already created by the users. Now let's pass to the logic of our application. So I'd like to underline the fact that the first version of our application is not secured at all. It's as simple as it can be, just to give you an idea of how to implement an easy application. So basically, the authentication part of our application is can be boiled down to this method, authService.login. So the user passes his username and his login and his password. It is sent to the server, and if everything goes well, if the user is authenticated, the server sends the answer back, and this fact is propagated in the application. No, there's nothing more about it. You remember this widget displayed a couple of screens ago. This is actually the React component that we used for it. So the interesting thing here is just this onAddNode method that is called when the node is when the save button is clicked, the node is sent to the server, and the server actually stores the node in the user's workspace. Nothing more about that. The onAddNode, and what I want you to do is I really want you to look at this slide, because it will be actually referenced later, and you'll see how we'll change it just to add the encryption to our application, and we'll add exactly this thing. We'll change exactly this thing. So now the onAddNode just passes the title and the content to the addNode method, to the internal addNode method, and the node is passed on the server. That is it. Well, this is the internal logic of our application. I'll just pass it right now. The node component. As you remember, there were some nodes on the background that were created by the user. There's nothing too interesting about it. There's just the delete node method that is called there, so the user can actually delete the node, can ask the server to delete the node, but it will actually pose a problem. It will actually be a problem, be a security concern just a couple of slides afterwards, and I want you to remember that the server provides the opportunity to delete the node. All right, so we'll finish with the front end right now, and we'll pass to the back end. I know, guys. Yes. All right. Sorry. I know, guys, that all of you are, well, almost all of you are, I suppose, are Java developers, and I know that there were some talks about getting started with Golang or using Golang in production, and here on this slide, we'll just we'll suggest a stack. If you are interested in Go, we'll suggest a stack that you can use to actually make the backend development with Go in an easy way. It's also, I'd like to also to mention that we've chosen to use the old school REST API, not a GraphQL, not a gRPC, for basically two reasons. First of all, we'd like to keep things simple, and secondly, we actually wanted to make things work. So basically, we just decided to stick with REST API. The authentication, the server will authenticate users with JWTs. For those of you who don't actually really familiar with this abstraction, with this technology, I'll explain it to you later. And as I've told you, there's a stack of technologies we used. We used Golang, SQLite, Gorm as the ORM, Gingonic as the web framework, and Ginjot for the authentication purposes. I'd like to underline the fact that our solution is not production grade. There's no HTTPS, no configuration files, nothing at all. It's just a simple solution to show you the problematic. The whole solution took less than 600 lines of code, and 200 lines were dedicated to testing. So as I've told you before, our solution is what you see is what you get. You get it from GitHub. You can hack and you can change it straight away. It's really simple. Here are the endpoints that we propose. Here are the logic of our application. So basically, the user can be authenticated, can be registered with our application, can log in, can create nodes, change its password. And the interesting thing that we'd like to propose is the feature for sharing nodes with other users. And you see, this sharing thing is a very good use case for actually the end-to-end encryption, as if the nodes will be end-to-end encrypted, they can be shared securely and quite easily. So just a quick recap on the JWT technology. The JWT are the Java Web Tokens, which allow the application to pass a token to the user and say, if the user claims this, if the user bears this token, he can actually claim the information that is inside its token. For example, if the user bears this token, and in this token it is mentioned that this user has login ALLIX in the application, then probably this user is ALLIX. So it's basically the token for getting you authentified against your application. The JWTs can also be used for encrypting things, but we'll be focusing on signing things here. What will we do for the user management on our service side? Well, actually, the user, as I've told you, the user can get registered against our service, can actually log in into it, and he can update passwords. And the bad thing about this is that, of course, passwords can be passed via TLS, for example. But in our application, the passwords will be stored in clear in the database. So if there is a database leak, there is a problem. And you know that there are techniques for mitigate that. You can hash passwords, you can salt passwords, everything's possible. But the problem is that we studied some applications, some web applications, and we see that even if the passwords are stored not in clear in their databases, they are passed in clear. So the applications themselves, the server applications, actually know your passwords, and that is a big deal. That is a big deal because, well, it can lead to a leak someday. And of course, the bonus features, because we like to provide bonus features for our users. You know, we actually provide the soft delete. What does it mean? It means when the user actually deletes the node, if the user changes his mind, he can actually restore the node. And this kind of thing is provided by many applications. Sometimes it's a feature, sometimes it can be regarded as a thing that is not necessary for the user and the user doesn't want it. Because if he wants to delete the node, he has to have the right to delete the node. Right? It's good sense. And it also makes sense for the government as well. The GDPR right now claims that, well, one of the claims of the GDPR is that if the user wants to delete a node, he has to have the right to delete the node completely, so no one can get access to it. And actually our solution, the DataPeps and the End-to-End Encryption in general, can help you to stick to the GDPR requirements as well. So just a quick observe on getting the nodes. So we'll be getting the nodes in our application in a real simple way. We'll just say that the user who has logged into our application is the owner of the nodes. We'll fetch the nodes which are associated with this owner in the database, and we'll show the nodes as well. This solution is quite fragile, and this solution is quite fragile for two reasons. First of all, it's really error-prone. So, for example, if there's a bug somewhere and the owner is not managed properly, it will display bad nodes, and also it can lead to SQL injections. For those of you who are old enough, you have had a great time with dealing with all kinds of SQL injections. Nowadays, the SQL injections are mitigated by different frameworks that you can use, but even if there are technologies for mitigating them, like really frequently we have some news on the new SQL injections that were discovered, for example, in Facebook. And if you regard the OWASP site, you would like to read the SQL injection prevention cheat sheet, you'll have just a couple of hours of quite high-quality time by trying to understand how you can actually prevent all the SQL injections vulnerabilities in your applications. Who's that? Actually, I was asked this question when we were preparing the presentation, and I told that this guy actually looks like a shady admin from my previous organization. And the thing is that, well, this kind of stuff, when you store the data in clear or you store your passwords in clear, when the admin goes rogue or when the database leaks, as I've told you, you'll have to deal with lots of complexity by explaining your users why their sensitive data has leaked. And this is a great problem. So now we are passing to the tool. We are passing to the tool that will actually, well, let you solve these kinds of problems that we have discussed earlier. And our tool is called DataPeps. DataPeps is a simple solution that consists of two parts. The DataPeps SDK that you need to integrate into your application, the DataPeps server that you need to deploy or either in cloud or on-premise, or you can use actually the service that we have deployed previously. And after that, after you deploy this solution, it just you can start actually securing your users' data with the use of encryption. And from now on, after deploying DataPeps, all the data that leaves the user device is actually secured by encryption, is secured by cryptography, and that means it is secured quite properly. Well, let's pass a couple of minutes by, well, a minute or so, by looking at the architecture of DataPeps. So as you can see, the user owns its proper key that it will actually use for encrypting the blue cube that represents his data, his sensitive data. And when this cube turns black, it is encrypted, so no one can get access to that. With the use of DataPeps SDK, the user encrypts this blue data, it passes it to your application server, so the evil admin or the hacker cannot actually have access to that. And he actually uses this orange-yellow cube that represents the DataPeps resource. The DataPeps resource is actually it's an abstraction that we have in DataPeps that represents a set of keys. Well, you can look at this as a wrapper which allows you to actually encrypt data. And this cube is also stored in the DataPeps database, but the interesting thing is that this cube is also encrypted, and so if the database of DataPeps leaks, no information actually leak. And the user can use this resource only on its proper device by decrypting it with using its own private keys. What is our mission now? We'll describe it in 5 simple steps. So first of all, if you're a developer of an application, you need to, well, we call it to create your application in DataPeps, but actually the application is already created, so we need to actually register our application at DataPeps, and by logging into DataPeps and by claiming the name of the application and its description. Then we need to configure, well, as we're talking about the authentication, use the JWT technology, we need to configure the application authentication method by passing the JWT Public Key, also by using the DataPeps UI. And then we need to change the authentication method that we have seen before. From now on, we will not be logging directly into the application. Instead, we'll be creating the object that's called connector, and that will actually help us to create the association against your application and the newly created application at DataPeps. So you'll pass the connector object to the method that's called datapeps.applicationapi.create session, which will actually allow you to receive the session of DataPeps that will allow you in its proper time to encrypt, to use all the encryption functionality of DataPeps. And you remember I asked you to just to keep in mind this onAddNode method that will change just to add the encryption, the real encryption into your application, into the Notes application. Now we add some couple of more lines, like we had 20 lines or so, and by doing this, we just create the session of DataPeps, and we encrypt the title and the contents of the node, as those are the sensitive data that should be protected. As you can see, in there is a DataPeps login that is also in bold on this slide, and that means that the user actually decides with whom he will share the node. So in this situation, he shares it only with himself. So just the user can see the node, but if he adds another user of the Notes application, then the node will be visible for both. And we'll change the node component as well, the node widget as well. So basically what we try to do here is we try not to change the UI of the user. So if you add the end-to-end encryption to your application, the last thing you want to do is just to confuse your user with all new features. For example, I don't know if the user wants to click a button to decrypt the node he receives. It's nothing. You shouldn't do that. Shouldn't be doing that. And that is why we add a couple of methods that decrypt the title and the content when the user fetches the nodes from the database, and the nodes are presented in a plain form. We'll add some more features. We will not show them in this code, but we'll actually add some more features. So the nodes you can choose either to encrypt the node or not by checking or unchecking the checkbox protected right there. And another interesting thing is that DataPeps, you actually have to generate the master key somehow when the user first connects to your application, and that is done by using the user password. So from now on, the application will not keep the user's password, as the password is always encrypted, and so we'll ask the user to change the password so the application does not know the new password that will be used for generating keys and that will be used for encrypting and decrypting the sensitive private data. What about server modifications? We don't want to do them, and we don't need to do them anymore. Your server keeps working as it has worked before, and we add literally nothing. So if you imagine a situation when a server is not accessible, or the server is not modifiable for some reason, but you won't actually add the end-to-end encryption to your application, it's quite easy to do. You don't need to think about it, you just need to change your client's code, and the solution will work. Now we pass actually to the demo. As our talk is about, implementing an application, a somewhat application, but as I've presented to you already what and how we have done things, we'll just get to the demo and we'll show you how things work from now on.
So, hi guys. Thank you for coming, and you are a lot of people, and sorry by advance for my English. So it's a big room and a big screen, and let's go. Okay, it's my bigger term ever. So just to demonstrate the impact of DataPeps, we create the application and run, and some users to just show the application without DataPeps, and we integrate DataPeps and see the impact of the integration of DataPeps. So if all the works, the user show nothing, and just we ask to change its password. So I just run the server backend. So it's really easy. It's just a simple Go backend with Jingonink, and we can see all the endpoints. Basically, we can log in, subscribe, create a node. It's a basic CRUD of nodes, and we will see later how to exploit the sharing of the nodes. And that's all. So I start also the front end. So it's easy. It's just npm start, and you can check out our GitHub repository of nodes to let's try something, or if we want to. So I'm okay. So this is your UI. So I just create an account. So let's go for Devoxx. I set a really secure password and create my account. So we can see the database now for just show what is doing here. So basically, it's just a SQLite. Okay, it's not a real DB, but for the demo, it's pretty good. So I can just see here. Okay, my login and my very secure password. So let's go. We create a node. So I'm logging in, and just okay, if you want. And I create a node. So I pick some content because I have no really imagination. So let's go, my title, and some content. Okay. So, as Sergey said before, as we doesn't integrate DataPeps yet, so the node is unclear in the DB, and if someone hack your database, they can leak all the node to the dark web or even on GitHub, and it's a problem. And if I want to see what you do in my application, I just need to go in the database and so show all of your notes. Okay, so basically it's not really personal information, okay, but it's problematic. So let's go to integrate DataPeps. So basically we can see perhaps the code after if I have some time left. But actually, you can check out the repository on GitHub and show what modification we do on the front end and just the front end. So I just check out the DataPeps. Sorry, DataPeps bunch. Okay, and so we can see. Here, the npm starts refresh with the new code. Okay? So, no. What is happening on the front end? I use my previous created with clear text data in backend and just log in. Okay. So, as Sergey said before, when you integrate DataPeps, it's pretty good to invite the user to change his password because it can already leak, or if you inspect some well-known services like Google, Facebook, Twitter, the password is unclear to the server, and after it's secured, but actually, if the password is transferred over the network, it can be stolen by anyone. Okay, so I change my password. Okay, so it's the password now for DataPeps, and I update the password. Okay, so I can see my previous note that is not encrypted. We don't do magic things, and so now I can create an encrypted note. So we have added just this checkbox to allow the user to send it's not in clear or in encrypted way. So okay. I create the note with another title. Oh, sorry. And a content. So when I click on the save button, we have introduced the encrypt method on the client side, so the content is encrypted in my browser and can be lived and saved securely on the server side. Okay, so just for have a graphical view, we just put the encrypted note as in orange and the other in the blue one. So, no. I can just show the DB, and I want to see the note, and we show what's so okay. So just a little word about passwords. So the password in the application server is not changed because actually the user password is now allowed to to access to the DataPeps session, and the application password is stored on DataPeps, but in end-to-end encrypted way. Okay, so we cannot store here, and we can change the password, and the user doesn't see anything. So let's go for the notes. I can see, okay, well, I can leak someone created a note, and you can see no meanings in this content. So when I was on the stand, some of guys asking me for, okay, it's just base64 cryptography. So let's just verify it's not a bullshit. And actually, we base our cryptography scheme on a pretty cool Belgium researcher. It's Bergstein. So it's cool to be here. Okay, so I am a hacker, and I want to see that because I see it's base64. Oh, okay, no, I can't read anymore the note. So thank you for the demo, and we can show, as I see it's some time left. We can show actually what we have modified, and it's pretty little change. Okay, I use VS Code, and just to see the diff. Okay, so what we had here. Okay, I change the README, okay, and I change this, okay, so just the linter. Oh no, so it's not something interesting here. Yes, yes.
It's in the client folder.
Yes, thank you. So actually, it's a README. We have npm installer DataPeps SDK, okay. And if I see in the source, okay. So let's see the authentication. So actually, we have just uncommented the previous code, but you can see here we have created a connector. So basically, the connector just say to DataPeps, or to the DataPeps SDK, how to create a user section, an application session, and how to retrieve a token from this session. So this token will be used by the DataPeps API to just authenticate that, okay, we can create a user for your application, and all the cryptography stuff is created on the client side only. So, and just call create a JWT session, and that's all. And we see it's not changing the user experience. So some basic stuff. So here I just gave the DataPeps session to other components. And here okay, we doesn't talk about that, so I don't use anymore the update password function from the service, but actually for DataPeps, because now the user password is handled by DataPeps. Okay, and let's see the notes component. So we choose in this demo to encrypt and decrypt in the view itself. Okay, so just before that the note is shown to the user, we decrypt, and just after he clicks save, we encrypt the note. So here it's a new note, so we encrypt something. So we just added a checkbox that allows the user to encrypt or not. And okay, if we want to protect the note, we just create a DataPeps resource, and we put some payload that is end-to-end encrypted also, and it's useful for the dashboard to show to the end user, okay, the note application has created this thing. You can click on this link to see the real result in the application, and a MIME type for something. And it's something important. We share the note only with me, and I encrypt and the title and encrypt the content. So the counterpart of this is how to decrypt a note. So basically, as we see before, just getting the resource and decrypting the title and the content, and set the state of the component to refresh for the clear text. So thank you. I let Sergey to continue.
Thanks. And actually, once again, just two things. The server has not been changed, so we have not restarted the server. The server kept running during the whole presentation. And another thing is that, as you have seen, we have changed just 100 lines of code, and we have implemented the whole end-to-end encryption story into the Notes application. So, well, cool. Cheers to us. Just one more thing before finishing this talk. We were talking about sharing notes. Actually, as you can remember, we talked that we'll add this cool new feature so the users could share the notes. We don't have actually much time to do this, so we actually would like to propose you to add this new feature, and of course that will be quite easy to do. Actually, you can imagine that well, you need to do a lot of stuff. You need to get the public keys of the user. You need to encrypt the note with the public keys. You need to pass the note to the server, and so the user would get the note, would verify that it was you who created the note. So it's a bunch of stuff. But DataPeps is about managing this complexity for you. DataPeps is the product that actually permits you not to think about all the details. So just to share the notes, you need to add a couple of lines, 3 lines here, and it will work. It should work. You just extend sharing group in the method into which you pass the other user login, and after that the note will be shared with this new user. And well, here's the work plan for you. Just a proposal. You don't need to change the server code, as we've discussed before. Everything is left untouched. And well, the client side. First of all, you have to implement node sharing without DataPeps, just node sharing inside your application, and then you just need to add DataPeps, well, the 3 lines of code I've shown you before, to actually share the node with another recipient. So actually, you can do it right now, and well, we'll propose a little challenge for you. So you can fork our demo repository. You can see that we didn't talk nonsense during this kind of talk. You'll see that it's actually easy to implement this kind of solution. You'll need to add the sharing feature, and you'll need to contact us with providing the link to your repository. And the best solution, the solution that correspond the best to our requirements, will actually win a year of unlimited DataPeps usage with support. So that's quite neat stuff, I guess. And the last thing, that is actually the first time we have a talk at Devoxx, and we really enjoyed this conference. Thank you guys, you've made it awesome actually. And what we want to propose, well, you know the Evernote, the most popular note creating and note keeping application which exists out there. The problem with Evernote is that if you want to encrypt something, you can actually do that, but for each resource that you encrypt, your password, your ID card, something else, anything else, well, you'll have to propose a new password. You'll have to encrypt the resource with this new password, and if you want to share it, you'll have to communicate this password by using a second channel somewhat. And this is quite messy. What we propose is that we as a community, we can actually create a Devoxx Note application that by adding a bunch of stuff like URL detection, like versioning, control like attachments, like we will use Markdown, or we integrate the application with Slack, and we'll actually can modify this basic application that we have presented to make something great, to make something interesting together. So that is the proposal we have for you. Well, thank you so much for your attention. Well, it was a pleasure to talk to you, to talk with you, and we have some time left, so we'll be glad to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you.